Greenlight Network presents Football Time.
Hey, and welcome to the Football Time podcast. We got a two-part episode today. We're going to bring in our man, Dynamite David, to recap the college football season, and then we're going to go to Achilles Reign to do the NFL wildcard round playoff recap and review. A two-part show of entertaining and entertaining. So let's bring in our man, Dynamite David, to go over the college football game. How are we doing, Dynamite?
I'm doing great. It's been a great season. Glad we were able to get it in, get it played, but I'm hopeful we get a more regular, normal season upcoming this year.
Yeah, the game sort of went pretty much how I thought the season went. A little undescript, not a lot of action, and just sort of we all sort of knew what was going to happen, and it played out exactly how we thought it was going to happen. No one could really stop Alabama at all season long, and they were just way superior than everybody. All right, so let's get into the game. Ohio State started trading scoring with them early on. I thought really the game pretty much turned when Ohio State kicked that field goal when they were, I believe it was 21-14, and they made it 21-17. They kicked a field goal instead of matching them. Alabama went down. Ohio State went 3-and-out on the next one. Alabama went down and scored again. And that pretty much ended the game right there and then. I didn't love the decision of going for a field goal. I figure if you're in that, you're going to be in a scoring contest with Bama, and it's time to just go for broke and go for a touchdown every time because, I mean, there was no realistic way Ohio State was stopping them.
Yeah, this is what Bama's done all year. They come out and they don't really necessarily blow away opponents early. They have in a few games, but for the most part, it's back and forth. But Alabama scores virtually every time they touch the ball. So while it may be back and forth early, they're eventually going to pull away. So you have to keep matching with them to even have a shot.
Deontay Smith was just ridiculous in the game. Well, I mean, he only played the first half, but he was ridiculous in the first half. I was curious draft-wise. Lawrence is going to be the number one overall, but the quarterbacks I've seen that will come out, Jones, the BYU kid, Fields, and Troy Lands out of North Dakota State. If you were the Jets, would you be more willing to reach for maybe one of those quarterbacks who I don't think anyone other than Lawrence is a guaranteed sort of NFL, probably guaranteed good quarterback in the NFL. Would you be more willing to go after somebody like Deontay Smith if you were the Jets and had that 2 pick?
I don't know if that's the type of guy that they're looking for. I still think this goes back to where the Jets royally screwed up in winning that game, just because they needed a franchise-changing quarterback, and I think Lawrence is the only one in the draft this year, like you just said. I think there's a lot of potential guys that may develop over 2 or 3 years, but I don't know. I mean, we'll see if the Jets can change the way their organization is run a little bit. But right now, they haven't really provided a good situation for Darnold to grow in, and I question whether or not they can develop a quarterback. So they really needed that go-to guy up front, and Lawrence is the only guy there, and the Jaguars have him locked down. There's no way they're getting rid of him. So I maybe see the Jets making a move, maybe trade down and get maybe Fields a little bit later, or Mac Jones a little bit later. But I think most indications are saying that they're going to take that kid from BYU.
Wilson, I believe.
Yeah, Zach Wilson. Yeah, and I think that's what they're going to go with. And he seems talented, but I don't think he's a game changer. So, but I don't. Maybe I don't think honestly. I don't know if I would take Devontae Smith first as a wide receiver. I still like Jamar Chase a lot, and he's had the benefit of a whole year of just training and resting, and I think that could benefit him a lot as far as being ready to go for the NFL season.
Yeah, I think I'd grab Devontae Smith. I just love route running, his hands. I think he's a special receiver. What would make me do it is I think there are going to be a lot of veteran quarterbacks out on the market. You know, so somebody like Matthew Stafford or somebody, if you're the Jets, you could take a flyer on him, bring him in, and maybe look at next year's draft or the year after that draft. I mean, there's always going to be quarterbacks in these drafts. And unless you're getting really a sure thing, which Lawrence, I really think is the only one. The rest I think are prospects. I think Wilson has a chance, but you know, I think that has a lot to do with what team he go to and how somebody, you know, molds him. And the Jets would not be my number one spot to mold someone into a future quarterback. But then I was going to get into Mac Jones. Now, he started creeping into the first round. I don't really know how to read him if he's a first-round NFL quarterback or he's surrounded by NFL talent. But, I mean, he was ridiculously accurate. That's, you know, not something that happens with, you know, just because your receivers are skilled, you don't become accurate because your receivers are skilled. Do you think Mac Jones is a first-round type NFL talent, and do you think he can be successful in the NFL?
I'm really torn on this. I think Alabama's got this good mix of you know, yes, they have many talented players, but they're also the just most well-oiled machine in college football. And I think a lot of people thrive on the success of everyone doing their job. You know, they really buy into the team effort. Devontae Smith, very successful because, you know, there's such a good offensive line and run game threat that brings people up and, you know, gives them single coverage over the top and opens up that play action game when Najee Harris is running the ball well. And I think Mac Jones is a good example of benefiting from the system. And I just don't know if he doesn't get placed on an already good team in the NFL, if he's going to have success.
Yeah, I think that's so. Would you be more willing down in the probably late 20s to maybe reach for somebody like a Mac Jones if you were, I don't know, probably Philly or something now needs a quarterback. Who knows with that situation? But if you were late down there in the 20s, would you be more willing to maybe take a shot at him?
Yeah, I think a team maybe with, you know, some weapons, maybe or a New England. New England, I think, is going to be looking for somebody. I think he could be a good fit there. Or, you know, if Houston ends up somehow trading away Deshaun Watson's contract, maybe they could get somebody, but they don't have any picks. So maybe if they trade Watson, they can get a pick and pick somebody else up, but I don't know if anybody's going to take on his contract. But I definitely think he needs to go on somebody that's either got some weapons or has a pretty good farm system, I guess you would say, in play where they're pretty good at developing talent. And, you know, the Patriots are a very good team for that, I think.
Yeah. Well, Andy Reid would be a good one, but I think that Chiefs job is probably locked up for a while.
Well, and I definitely don't think he should go to the Eagles because last I heard, the number one on their coaching list right now was Adam Gase. Which
yeah, I don't think that's
that would be like the most Philly thing ever.
Possible, Gase could just get passed around each year to find somebody to tank and try to get you the first pick.
Yeah, I was going to say, if the Eagles' goal is to get the first-round draft pick, then maybe bringing Gase in for a year or two would be the good thing to do.
All right, one last quarterback question on this. Fields looked great in the Clemson game, did not look great in this game. It's sort of been his career at Ohio State. He'll really look awesome in some games and then look just flat like he did yesterday. What do you make of his sort of NFL future and his maybe draft spot overall in the NFL?
This is another one that just goes back to show that Trevor Lawrence is the only lock here. I've just a lot of questions with these guys right behind him, and I just don't understand the fascination with everybody having to take new quarterbacks rather than developing what they have, just because, you know, while Fields may have the arm strength, he's shown that a lot of times in the big games he falls short, and I just don't know how he'll handle the NFL speed on the defense. And you've got to be, you know, yes, while you have the physical talent, you know, I think decision making and you know, between the ears is probably more important or just as important as the physical talent. And not saying he's unintelligent, but you've got to be able to make those reads and beat these fast defenses because you can't just beat them with your arm strength in the NFL.
Yeah, I'm not quite as sold as on him. I'm definitely more sold on Wilson. I might even bump Mac Jones up in there because I think he's really accurate, and I think that plays in the NFL. If you're accurate, I mean, you're seeing Drew Brees right now. He throws a ball 2 miles an hour, but he puts it in the right spot, and that gets completion. So I just think there's some inconsistency at time with Fields and his accuracy and his decision making. So I'd be a lot less more bullish to draft him, especially really early on. If I was in the top 5, maybe even the top 8, 10 to 15 range, I'd probably be more willing, especially with the way the NFL's going with these more movement oriented offenses and quarterbacks. But just not quite as sold on him as I am with the others. All right, so let's go into a preview of maybe next season a little bit. It's never too early to get into next season. Hopefully next season will go a tad more smooth. So I pulled up the odds. I told you to pull up the odds for next season's national champion. Do you like anything right now?
Well, besides the obvious Alabama Clemson picks, I think you can't go wrong taking either one of those, but you're not going to get a whole lot of value there. Beyond that, I like a little bit more values. Oklahoma at plus 700. I think they really started to get things rolling towards the end of this year, and Rattler's going to get another year of experience, and plus they play in the Big 12, so good chance they can make the playoffs. And I also like Oregon at plus 5,000. I think they're a pretty solid team, and they're gonna grow again this offseason, and they're in the Pac-12, so just get to the playoffs, and you've got a shot. And I like their value at plus 5,000.
Yeah, I was highly disturbed by the Tennessee at plus 5,000 with Oregon. Anyone who is taking that is getting horrible value, but that's a story for probably sometime in the off season or the summer. But I would avoid Tennessee at 50-1 to win the national championship. 50,000 to 1, possibly, but I think they'd have to bring back everyone from about 1990 to 2002 and build a roster out of that. But I had a couple. I saw your Oklahoma one at 7-1. Its value was all right, but then you're like, well, if they played, do you think they could beat Alabama or Clemson? And I'd be like, well, no, and you'd probably be getting 3-1 anyway by that point, and it just didn't. It looks like good value, but
Hey,
I don't know how great a value it actually is.
be honest though. Go. Besides maybe Ohio State and Georgia, is there any other team you would take right now over Alabama or Clemson?
No,
No.
probably not. I
No.
had one I was looking at as like a real long shot. TCU finished the season pretty good. If we're going with Big 12 teams, that offense comes alive. Their defense is one of the few that actually chooses to play defense in the Big 12. Now, I mean, would I wager the house on it? No, but at 150-1, if that quarterback turns out good, they win the Big 12. They're in the Final Four, and then you can start insuring things because you have a 150-1 bet. So that one stuck out to me a little bit. The other one, it's more dependent on health, but Miami at 40-1 seemed okay, but there's no telling with De'Aaron King. They say he's going to be back for the Alabama game to open the season. I'm not 100% sold that the man can tear his ACL at the end of December and be back ready to play football by the end of August, but that's what they're saying. But you wipe off that Alabama game, assuming they'll lose that one. But if they can go through the ACC, win the ACC, which they haven't done, but maybe there was a little bit of drop in Clemson, at least defensively, the last couple of years. Maybe they're starting to come back to the pack a little bit. They lose Lawrence. Now the kid behind him might be quite good as well. But if that defense starts to maybe break down a little bit, maybe a new team emerges out of the ACC. So I charted Miami down at 40-1 as a decent chance to at least get into the playoffs. All right, so we'll move on to Heisman. This is possibly my least favorite award and possibly the stupidest award. Though I will say it did at least go to the best player this year and not just some random babyface quarterback. So that was at least cool. But you have any Heisman ones you like?
The one I really like, and he's one of the top favorites here. I really like DJ Uiagalelei at Clemson. I think he's going to step right in for Trevor Lawrence, and I mean he showed in that Notre Dame game that he can throw the ball well. Had a really good offensive game there, and most of their competition's so in the ACC. The other big favorite would be Rattler, but those are the top two favorites right now. So I'm actually going to go with another good value pick in the SEC and Corral out of Ole Miss at plus 2,800. I think just the way Kiffin throws the ball around and he could get some good stats and one big upset over Alabama and he could be right there.
Yeah, well, then he'd probably come back and lose to Vanderbilt. So I could see it numbers wise, but I don't think they'd have the wins to be in there. I had a couple back to the babyface quarterback Sam Howell. I'm sure will be getting ESPN probably already is doing stories ready to go for the new season. So I'm sure he will get a lot of hype at the start of the year for sure with North Carolina. And I thought JT Daniels, they love those Georgia Bulldogs. He put up decent numbers those last handful of games. I don't know if they can win enough games, but if they do win enough games, make it to the SEC championship game, and Daniels has a solid season. He's got the California quarterback boy thing, and then he's playing at, a big-time Southern school. So I liked JT Daniels at 1,800, so that seemed like a solid one to maybe take a flyer on. All right, so that's our college football season in review. Anything else you want to add to the college football end of the year?
Yeah, I got a question that I thought was a really good hypothetical what if. So between this year's Alabama team, if they played last year's LSU team, who would you take?
I think I'd probably take the Alabama team. I think offensively they would be way too tough to stop. That LSU defense, I think, was a little bit less impressive than that Alabama defense. I thought that Alabama defense towards the end of the year really started to play well. So I think I'd lean a little bit towards Alabama. Now, are you giving me like Alabama with a healthy Jalen Waddle?
Sure.
Okay. Well, I need Waddle and Smith there.
Well, you got Waddle and Smith versus Jefferson and Chase.
Yes.
And then Edwards-Helaire versus
Najee Harris.
Yeah, Najee Harris. I mean, that's and then Burrow versus Jones. That'd be a heck of a game if we, I think about it in my head and I just think that would be a much better game than what we had last night.
Yeah, I think that's one of sort of the sad parts of this season. I think this Alabama team is probably one of the really great college football teams of all time. And I don't know how finally this season's going to be remembered, or even if it's going to totally be remembered, because it was so just sort of broken up and teams playing all sorts of numbers of games. And it was just a mismatched season. And I'm a little sad that this Alabama team might not, towards the end, get the respect it totally deserves, because I think they were just loaded both on offense.
Yeah, I think it's definitely Saban's best team he's had since he's been there, which is saying a whole lot.
Yeah. All right. So hopefully next year we get a full, real good season. We might have you on a handful of times throughout the, let's call them spring months, maybe some draft coverage, possibly some win totals and division totals when those start to break out in the summer. But that's our college football season. We thank the Dynamite for joining. we're going to move to college basketball with the Dynamite. He's on full-time college basketball duty now. Where can we find you, Dynamite?
You can follow me at GLN Dynamite _D on Twitter.
All right, we'll go to our NFL playoff wild card recap and review podcast. We're here with our man, Achilles Rain, to do the NFL playoffs wild card round recap and review show. Are you ready to get into some playoff matchups, Achilles?
Oh, yes, buddy. These playoffs, man, they never last long enough, but they sure come at you hard.
Yes, they do. And they certainly started out with a pretty decent game. I think it worked its way from decent all the way to, by the end, pretty bad. But a little headline to get into before we get into the playoffs. Reversal. Doug Peterson is fired. I think we were both shocked on Black Monday when he didn't get the axe, but he got it a week later. What do you make of the firing? I know we both thought he probably should go. So what do you make of it?
Honestly, I was a little shocked, and then not so much because I didn't think he deserved it, because I think that it got to the point where you had to part ways. I think the most surprising part about it was the fact that it didn't happen when we expected it to. So I thought his job was safe for another season. Now, there are reports out there that say that a lot of this has to do with the fact that he doesn't want Wentz as a starting quarterback, and apparently upper brass is completely sold on Wentz as the quarterback. So I'm not sure how accurate these reports are, but it definitely shocking. I didn't expect to hear firing news from a playoff team after wild card round. So it was a little surprising.
Yeah, we might get into one more coach I think needs to go off that Andy Reid tree that was disappointing. But we'll get into that in our review. That situation became such a mess. We'll probably answer trivia questions about name the worst coach to ever win a Super Bowl. And Dougie's might come up there because really, other than that Super Bowl season, the Eagles have been brutal to watch.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate and a little surprising. Like I said, the timing on it, it's probably not what we're used to getting. I don't know how much of it had to do with, talks that went on after the season ended. But, I guess they'll always have that statue. So, him and his quarterback can get together and travel down to Philly and stare at their statues for a little bit. But, yeah, a little surprising and a little shocking.
Yeah. All right. You ready to get into the games?
Oh, yeah, buddy. Let's do this.
All right. Let's kick it off with probably the best playoff game of the week. Colts-Bills. Bills won 27-24. Phillip Rivers was really quite good. Played a great game. 27 of 46, 309 yards, 2 touchdowns. Jonathan Taylor, 21 of 78 and a touchdown. Michael Pittman, 5 for 90. Jack Doyle, 7 for 70. Josh Allen, 26 for 35, 324, 2 touchdowns, 11 carries, 54 yards, and a touchdown. Zach Moss had 7 for 21 before he left with an injury, and Stephon Diggs, 6 for 128 with a touchdown. This was really a good game. Both teams, I thought, played ridiculously well. If you start looking into the analytics and the numbers on it, it's quite amazing how the Colts didn't end up winning this game. But the Bills' offense, I will say, was picture perfect, and Josh Allen had to be amazing to win this game, and he was amazing, and he ended up stealing this win. So what did you make of this game?
Yeah, to me, I thought that this was probably one of those games, as far as the wild card round is concerned, that was probably the most entertaining of the bunch. And at the end of the game, I kind of, felt a little down, and it wasn't because of the energy the game provided. It was a really fun game to watch, but the fact that one of these two teams had to get knocked out of the playoffs was really disappointing, especially the way they both came in and really played their hearts out. I thought the game itself was, I don't want to say one-sided, because both teams came out and played really hard. And I think that anyone could have won this game. Statistically, if you look at the stats, it looks like the Colts probably should have won that game. And they almost had a shot at least at getting back in there at the end with some of the things that Josh Allen was doing. But Overall, I think it was a great game, and I'm really happy for the Buffalo Bills franchise as a whole. They, move on to the next round with the big win, and I expect big things from this team. As long as Josh Allen can kind of keep things under control, I think that they're probably looking at one of the scarier teams to play in these playoffs.
Yeah, we'll get into it on Thursday. The Bills-Baltimore matchup is going to be ridiculously good, but I'm sure the Bills are feeling a little hard done by. They're the 2 seed and going to end up playing the Colts and the Ravens in back-to-back weeks. That seems pretty hard done by to be the second-best team in the AFC. But I wanted to ask you a couple questions about key moments in this game. Probably the keyest moment that turned this thing all around was Frank Reich going for it on 4th down right there on the goal line. They didn't get it. Buffalo drove down and took the lead. I agreed with the decision to go for it. I think his rationale was if he kicks a field goal there, it becomes 13-7. You're kicking the ball off to Buffalo. They come down and score like they did. It's 14-13 going into halftime. If you get that touchdown, it's 17-7. If they drive down, get that touchdown, it's still 17-14. They go into halftime winning. What did you make of the decision? What did you make of the play calls down there?
So this is the thing, okay, is I get the analytics behind it. All right. I understand the rationale with, going for it, especially when you're that close and the way your offense is playing. But, to me, this is the playoffs. This is not the time to get cute. I think when it comes to the playoffs, you kind of have to get traditional with it. And by that, I mean, try to pound the rock, play good defense, and get whatever the defense gives you. At that point, you had points on the board, and if it was just that one call that I was kind of questioning, I wouldn't have said anything about it. I would just kind of, okay, whatever. He made that call and it didn't work out his way. But the fact that there were a couple of calls in this game that I even sent out a tweet during the game where I was questioning whether the Colts were trying to put themselves out of this game on purpose or what the situation was there. But like I said, if it was just that one call, I wouldn't have felt bad about it. But the fact that they had a couple of different calls in this game that to me were questionable, that's the reason why this particular play in itself was so impactful, and probably I wouldn't have done it.
All right. So you're against it. I'm okay with it. I think the one I had a big problem was when he challenged that Zach Moss play in the second half. He had already burned a timeout in the second half on trying to save a delay a game. That drives me nuts every time, especially in the second half. I figure eat those 5 yards. You're going to need those timeouts in the end, which they really did. But I thought the challenge on the Zach Moss fumble was a real mistake because you had burned that timeout. You left yourself one timeout. And honestly, with the way that Buffalo defense was getting shredded, if they had 2 to 3 timeouts going into that final drive, I think for sure the Colts would have tied it up with a field goal. And I'm not 100% sold they wouldn't have drove down and got a touchdown there.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with you. I think that, like I said, there was a couple different play calls that just made me question the entire play call for the game. If it would have been just that one particular play, I think I could have kind of just played that off. But the fact that there were a few things here compounded like my feelings towards just a bad coaching game in general. But, even with those bad calls, they were still in it and they still played a really good game. And it's, like I said, it's tough to have one of these teams exit. It's also tough seeing how good Buffalo played. The fact that they have to play against Baltimore next, it's going to be tough for them. But they've been playing really well, so they have a really good shot.
Yeah. Last thing on this game, Josh Allen, who has taken some heat in the playoffs because he played one game and he was a little fragile. He was just tremendous, and he had to be tremendous. That second half, he was throwing darts, scrambling out of the pocket, hitting guys on the sideline. He was their main rusher, just obliterating the Colts up the middle. If he's a little off at all, any turnover, any mistake, I think the Colts win this game.
You mean like that fumble late in the game when he was game is basically in hand. All you got to do is try to run that clock down as much as you can, and he tried to get cute with it. Almost lost the ball. You know, I heard it on one of the sports media channels. Can't remember which one it was, but they referred to him as Candy Josh or something like that, where basically, I mean, it's almost like a kid when they get to sugar rush and he just can't stop himself. He's just jittery. And that's kind of the way that he looked at the end of that game. Almost like he couldn't believe the fact that they were advancing, you know, in these playoffs, and he was just too giddy, couldn't control himself. Tried getting a little too cute with it and almost lost that football. Very possible situation where the defense could have scooped it, you know, ran it back and got a touchdown out of it. And then you got a whole different story on your hands. But ultimately, they got the job done. He played really well, you know, all minus that last little blunder he had. Very, very, very impressive performance by Josh Allen.
Well, honestly, the way that Buffalo defense was playing, I almost was at the point where they should just give the Colts the score so the Bills could get the ball back and try to drive down and get the win. What'd you make of this Bills defense? The offense put a couple death blows on the Colts, and then that Bills defense just came out there and let the Colts hit bam, 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 quick plays a couple times, get real quick touchdowns. Is this Bills defense making you a little nervous in the playoffs here?
Well, is it making me a little nervous in the playoffs? Yeah, it definitely is. I think that a lot of it, though, we kind of expected. The defense hasn't really been a completely like shut down or lockdown defense all season long. They've had situations where they've played really well, and they've also had games where they were a little susceptible and they showed, you know, that they had holes in their defense. But overall, I think that this team as a whole, not just the offense, the team as a whole is solid enough that whatever cause for concern you might have gets diminished a little bit just because of how good they're playing. So is it concerning? A little bit, but there are few teams in the wild card round or in the playoffs in general that have like really elite defenses. So I'm not really too concerned about it, but it definitely is something to kind of, you know, focus on as you go forward.
Yeah. All right. You ready to move on to our next playoff game?
Oh yeah, I wonder what this one is.
Yeah, I think you'll be a little bit excited here. I wouldn't call it a beautiful masterpiece, but it ended up in the right results. The Rams 30, the Seahawks 20. Jared Goff 9-19, 155 and a touchdown. John Walford 3 of 6, 29 yards, and randomly decided to do a head first dive in a NFL football game, and that doesn't work all that often. Eventually,
Shocking, huh?
you will get knocked out. Cam Akers looked really good at 28 for 131. Cooper Kupp 4 for 78. Russell Wilson was possibly the worst I'd ever seen Russell Wilson. 11 for 27, 174, 2 touchdowns and an interception. Chris Carson 16 for 77. DK Metcalf 5 for 96, 2 touchdowns. Defensive game. I don't know how it went over, but it went over. What'd you make of it?
Well, you know me as a Ram fan. I was really excited to see my boys get past the Seahawks. I didn't think they could pull it off. I had hope, but I really didn't think they could pull it off. Especially when Wolford came out. I thought that Wolford did a pretty good job in the couple series that we saw him, the couple plays we saw him. He looked like this offense was set up for him. And I think I even heard during the broadcast, a couple different analysts mention the fact that Jared Goff did a really good job because he came out and he played a game plan that wasn't designed for him. It was designed for a different type of skill set, and he was able to handle it well enough to pull off the victory. He didn't look great. I didn't think that he would have, even if he would have started the game. He hasn't been great all season long, but the fact that he just had surgery on his thumb 11 days prior to the matchup, I think was probably kind of scary for all Ram fans watching. Seahawks are a tough team. You know, Russell Wilson is probably one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and that defense had definitely been playing a lot better over the last few weeks. They were kind of getting back to that Seahawks style defense that we're used to, very aggressive, very gritty. They're going to come at you and they're going to hit you and they're not going to apologize for it. And they came out like that early on. Wolford got hurt on a very unadvisable type of dive play. I don't understand why he goes head first. We talked about it, before the wild card round began, that he was very careless in his running, and he took probably about 5 shots the week prior to that. The fact that he got knocked out was very unfortunate, but not surprising. Cam Akers played lights out, man. He was all over the place. I thought that this was probably the healthiest he's looked since coming back from that injury. So we definitely needed it. It was a good game to watch.
Yeah, great performance by Cam Akers. Really looked fresh. That carried them throughout the day. I don't get the golf hate. The man has 3 pins in his thumb. He wasn't going to be launching darts down the field. I mean, if this had been Aaron Rodgers or something who played with 3 pins in his thumb, we'd be building a whole new historical museum in Canton for him. So, that sort of stuff drives me nuts that they're still hammering him as he's throwing. He's gutting it out. I will ask the question, was there a reason why we didn't add a third quarterback active on the roster? That seemed like a pretty dangerous game to be playing right there.
That was a super dangerous game, especially, like I said, when you watch the way that Wolford was playing the previous game, very reckless, type of guy that, like I said, is going head first on dives and putting his head down as he's trying to get an extra yard or two. I didn't understand the fact that they didn't have the extra quarterback. I guess I know you have Hecker as an emergency quarterback, but that's your punter. Hecker, he's made some nice throws in the past, but he's not a quarterback. He's a punter. And you have other quarterbacks on your roster, especially quarterbacks that have played in NFL games before. So the fact that they didn't have a third quarterback was very surprising and a little scary when it came down to it, because I wasn't sure how long Jared Goff was going to last, especially the way that defense was pinning their ears back and just going after him. They knew that if they were going to get beat by Jared Goff, they were going to force him to make some throws. Now, fortunately, he did make some throws, especially that one pass to Bobby Trees, as they like to call him, where he was kind of wide open, on the left side of the field and scored a touchdown. He had to make these type of plays, and he did. I do give him a lot of props for, toughing it out. Like you said, if it was any other player, we would be, praising them and like you said, building them a new building in Canton right now. But I think the reason he gets a lot of the hate he gets, regardless of how tough he played, is the fact that he hasn't had a good season all season long. So the expectations aren't quite there yet. It's just the fact that he came out, though, and performed the way he did. I was really happy for him and happy for the team in general.
Yeah, let's switch to the Seattle side of things. I did not think this was Pete Carroll's best game. I couldn't even figure out what the Seahawks offensive game plan was. I couldn't tell if they wanted to run, wanted to throw, wanted to take shots deep, wanted to short intermediate passing game. It just seemed to mix and mash. Now, a lot of that I think has to do with the Rams defense and the front getting to you. But, Russell was, like I said, that's the worst I'd ever seen him play. What did you make of Pete Carroll's offensive game plan here? What did you make of Russell Westbrook's play here?
I thought that Russell Westbrook, you got NBA on the mind, buddy.
Russell Westbrook. Yeah, I was just reading about how he was out for a week. Good work.
Yeah.
Russell Wilson.
I was going to try and let that one slide, but I just couldn't. I had to get you. I don't default Pete Carroll. I thought that he came out with a solid game plan. I think that he really had to implement the run if he wanted to beat the Rams. The Rams have one of the best pass rushes in the league, and if you want to slow that pass rush down, you've got to run the ball. It's plain and simple. It's really that simple. You have to run the ball. Running the ball effectively then opens up the passing game for Russell Wilson or Russell Westbrook, whoever you got back there throwing the ball. But
they might have been better with Russell Westbrook back there on Sunday.
Listen, I'm not really trying to fault Russell Wilson. The guy is an excellent football player. I'm sure that there's 31 other teams out there. Well, maybe not 31, but there's at least 20 other teams out there that would love to have him on their roster. He's a great football player, but you can't put the game in his hands. We've seen it. We saw it in playoff game against the Patriots in the Super Bowl. You can't put the game in his hands. As great as he is, he can't do it by himself. So I think that Pete Carroll put together the right game plan. They were trying to be balanced. They tried running the ball. They just weren't that effective. That Rams defense, as bad as that offense has been all season long, that Rams defense is a Super Bowl caliber defense, and I think that they will give fits to just about anybody. The fact that they were able to stay in it was probably kind of a victory in my book, but overall, they had a few, misses here and there that they probably wish they could take back. But I don't really fault Pete Carroll. I think that he did what he could, putting a game plan together. They're just a couple pieces short of a full set there.
Yeah. Okay, we'll move on to the next game. Tampa Bay 31, Washington 23. This game was close. I never felt it was, though, really in danger, but I was never too impressed with Tampa Bay. But Tom Brady, 22 of 43, 81, 2 touchdowns. Leonard Fournette, 19 of 93, 1 touchdown. Mike Evans, 6 for 119. Heineke, the star of the game, and possibly next season, maybe, I doubt it, but a fun story, and we can all buy Heineke jerseys in the offseason and then forget who he is in a couple of years. But 26 for 44, 306, touchdown and an interception. Heineke, 6 carries, 46 yards and a touchdown. Gibson, 14 for 31. Didn't look all that healthy. Chris Sims, 7-104. McLaurin, 6 for 75. So, good game, fun game at night, but I never thought Washington was going to come and win it, but they kept it close.
Yeah, I think it's more of a moral victory for them. I didn't expect them to win this game either. I thought that Tampa Bay was just way overpowered. They have way more weapons, and they're probably a little better established because they've had the same quarterback all season long. With that being said, I think that Washington State came out and they were pretty gritty, and they did what we expect them to do, which is try. That's all you can really ask for. They made the playoffs. I know they didn't have a winning record, but they won their division. So that's something, that was accomplished. It's something to be proud of. Even if it was about division, winning a division is still hard in the NFL. So, they got to get some respect for that. And no one gave them a shot, and they came out and they tried. I don't think anyone saw them winning this game. This game to me wasn't really close. Even though the score kind of indicates that it was, I felt like Tampa Bay really had control of this game pretty much from the beginning to the end. To me, it was a good way to wind down from a really stressful day. We had a lot of excitement early on, and I think that this was a perfect game to just kind of sit back, relax, and let the day finish.
Yeah, if they could have found a way to force one turnover at a time, I think this could have been a little bit of a game, but they didn't. I'm curious on your take on Tampa Bay. Were you impressed by them, or do you still get that, they have a lot of weapons, but blah. It always looks blah. It's like the names are impressive. The results are sort of in between.
Yeah, and that's exactly how I feel about it. And it's kind of been my go-to line all season long when we've talked about Tampa Bay. They have a lot of big marquee names, and that's pretty much where I kind of stand. I wasn't really impressed. I thought that this was the perfect opportunity for them to come out and really establish to the rest of the playoff teams that they're here to play, they're here to win. I don't think they did that. I think that they blew an opportunity in a situation where they were a lot more overpowered than the other team was, both on offense and on defense. Although I think Tampa Bay's defense, it's good, and it ended up, with good statistics at the end of the season. But I think that they weren't that much better than Washington's defense, who probably doesn't get as much love, in the NFL circles as they probably deserve. Overall, they got the win. Now they get to face off against a divisional opponent, which if they play the way they played, I don't see them winning.
Yeah,
but that's a segment for next week.
Yes, it is. All right. So we'll go to the Sunday games. We'll start out with the Baltimore Ravens 20, Tennessee Titans 13. Lamar Jackson 17 to 24, 179. Interception, 16 carries, 136, and a touchdown. Dobbins 9 for 43. Marquise Brown 7 for 109. Tannehill 18 to 26, 165, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Derrick Henry 18 of 40. A.J. Brown 683, 1 touchdown. Tennessee got control early. Baltimore didn't panic. Stuck to their game plan this time and pounded that option attack and broke free and got the big plays from Lamar that they needed and got the game. Well, what'd you make of it?
Yeah, to me, it was like almost a repeat of Saturday morning. Started off with a bang, and they did a really good job. I thought that the game was going to be a lot tighter. I believe that when it came to picking this game, I took the Titans because I thought they would come out and really implement the run and keep the Baltimore offense off the field for a lot longer. I thought they would come out and control it, and I didn't think they had to play spectacular defense. I think they just had to do enough to, keep Baltimore from scoring some points. The defense wasn't horrendous, but they did okay. I think that the big story of that game was that Baltimore defense, the way they came out and really shut down, Derrick Henry. Overall, though, I think it was a really entertaining game. It was, great way to start that Sunday morning. And I don't know. I'm excited to see this Baltimore team going forward. I thought that they might have a little bit of a setback, especially as hot as they got towards the end of the regular season. I thought it couldn't hold up. I thought they might have a little bit of a letdown, but they proved me wrong. They came out and they were firing on all cylinders. Lamar Jackson is looking like Lamar Jackson of last season. He's looking nice and limber. My wife did kind of mention as we were watching the game that she didn't think he looked quite 100% recovered from the COVID situation. And I have to kind of agree with her. He doesn't quite look like he's 100%, but it's enough for Lamar Jackson to get wins. So no one's complaining.
Yeah, I was just going to ask a couple things. I felt like Tennessee sort of, I don't know, walked right into what Baltimore wanted them to do. Baltimore put their line up there. It got the pressure on Henry, put their linebackers up there, and we're not going to let Derrick Henry go. And sort of dared Tannehill to try to beat them in their, secondary coverage. And they threw a lot more than I thought they were. This game was never really out of hand. It was a one-possession game throughout. I really thought they'd use Henry more in that fourth quarter, especially based on last year's game where Henry was – had like 17 carries for like 45 yards going into that fourth quarter last year in the playoffs. And then he had like 10 carries for 100 yards. And I just sort of thought they broke their offense and how they, really should have played this game. I'm curious if you thought they gave in and put a little bit too much on Tannehill and didn't put enough on Henry in this game.
Totally. I know that when you look at the stats, Derrick Henry didn't have a great day. But if you watch the game, as the game progressed and it got later on in the game, it almost seemed like he was starting to wear down that defense. He had a few situations where if he would have broke one more tackle, he would have been gone. And I kind of saw it, developing as the game got later and later. I think that they definitely got away from using him more and put it more on Tannehill, which, listen, I'm not trying to downplay Tannehill. He had a great season. His numbers were ridiculous. But that team is built to run the ball first. And I understand that they have some really good weapons at wide receiver, but this team is a run first team and their success relies on that. If they can run the ball well, they're probably going to beat you because once you start focusing on just the run and trying to stop Derrick Henry, those big wide receivers on the outside are going to make some plays. We've talked about it before, just between ourselves, off air, that it's shocking that with receivers like Metcalf and, some of the Titans wide receivers, the fact that while they were in college, they didn't win championships because these guys are really explosives. And it was a little shocking as the game played out, but I definitely think that they probably should have focused a little bit more on Henry. I know the game was tight, but it wasn't out of hand. So I don't understand why they kind of went away from using him more.
Yeah. Last question. Do you have any rational explanation why Mike Vrabel decided to do a 20 net yard punt on 4th and 2 from the 40-yard line in a 4-point game?
Yeah, I don't have any of it, and I believe that we both were receiving text messages from our colleague Dynamite, who was up in arms about it. It made no sense. I didn't understand it, and this is a playoff game, and I know that at some point you do kind of have to follow the rule book and punt on certain situations. But I didn't think that this situation called for it, especially where they were, where the ball was positioned at. I think they definitely had the opportunity to go for it, whether it was some sort of trick play or whatever. I just this is your final game, and if this is how you're going to go out, um, I hate to say it, but you almost kind of deserve to. So
Yeah, well, basically you punted. Baltimore went down, scored points, and ball game. That pretty much ended it, and you didn't even give yourself really a chance there. So just interesting decision by Mike Rabel, but good game by Baltimore. Good win by Lamar Jackson. That Ravens offense stood strong and ran their stuff, and that defense looked really, really good. All right, 2 more games to go. These probably will be a little bit harder to break down. The Bears versus the Saints. The only thing good I can say about this was the Nickelodeon feed was kind of fun. Minus that they picked a game where nobody scored any points, so we didn't get any slime cannon touchdowns. But fun Nickelodeon feed, liked that. But Chicago Bears 9, New Orleans Saints 21, Trubisky 19-29, 199, and a touchdown. Montgomery 12 of 31, Allen Robinson 6 of 55, Brees 28-39, 265, 2 touchdowns, Kamara 23-99 and a touchdown. Michael Thomas 573 and a touchdown. The Saints did not look great. The defense looked good, but the Bears were literally in this and produced basically nothing of offense. They had a trick play. Your boy Weems dropped that puppy, and that thing went pretty much downhill from there.
yeah, the Bears definitely needed to come out and play really aggressive offense. Now I know that they didn't really end the season strong against the Packers, but prior to that, their offense had been on fire. They'd been putting up at least 30 points per game for their previous 3 games prior to that Packer game. So I felt like they needed that type of performance if they were going to even be close, because I know this Saints team didn't look great, but you have to also understand it was the first time they played together like this in a long time. Their wide receiver was back for the first, I believe he had his first scoring touchdown of the year, if I'm not mistaken. But
Yes, he did.
yeah, so I mean, I felt like for the Saints, they really had to come together and get some sort of flow going because they haven't played together. They have their weapons back, and to me, this is one of the most dangerous teams. I know that the Packers are probably the favorite in the NFC, but I think that the Saints are a really, really scary team, especially once they get the flow going. They do have to get a little bit of continuity going because that's just the type of offense that they play. But I think they looked really good. I think that they came out and they knew what they were facing. I don't think that they overthunk it, really. They did what they were supposed to do. Coach Payton, you love him or hate him, the guy is really smart at putting together game plans. We saw it when, he didn't have his quarterback. We saw when he didn't have his wide receiver. We saw when he was missing pieces on defense. He puts together the type of game plan that's going to work, whether it looks flashy or not. And that's all that matters. It doesn't matter how many points it won by. It doesn't matter how good the offense looked, who got slimed and who didn't get slimed. What really matters is the fact they were going to win this game. I knew that it was going to be a little tough with, kind of trying to get everybody going after not having everybody together. But it worked out, for the Bears side of the ball. Very disappointing. It almost felt like they had a little bit of rhythm going. And that one play where, like you said, Trubisky put it right in his breadbasket. I mean, it couldn't have been thrown any better. That was like a perfect throw, and it went right through his arms. I think it was downhill from there. once that happened, I think the morale completely died off, and the Saints smelled blood, and they did what killers do, and they came out and they just attacked. Those guys, the Saints team as a whole, they're a scary, dangerous team, both on offense and defense. We saw that defense play lights out when Brees was out, and it's not a team that I'm excited to face. So I'm glad I'm not facing them in this next round for as a Ram fan, but they're dangerous, man. They're scary.
Yeah. This is where I wanted to get into the Nagy thing. I just thought he was atrocious calling offense today. You basically had David Montgomery the whole second half of the season running the ball and racking up yards. And I know that Saints defense is really good defensively against the run, but to give Montgomery 12 carries in a game that was basically a one-score game, pretty much until the last, moments of that fourth quarter, I don't understand that. I just I don't want to sound weird here because it'll make it think like I think Mitchell Trubisky is good, but I think there's an NFL quarterback in there, and I don't think he's been properly coached by Nagy, and I'm just ready for the Nagy era to be over. Him and Peterson can go buddy up and build some fake offensive numbers somewhere else.
Yeah, I like I said, I think Trubisky looked good. I know that he didn't really show it in the first half of the season, but he was undefeated for the first half of the season. He didn't lose the game. I know his numbers weren't flashy, but he was getting the job done. He was doing enough to win. Now, when he came back in after being benched, his numbers were definitely picking up. He was looking a lot better. He was making big plays, and he tried to do that this game, and he almost did. If it wasn't for a couple of miscues on offense, we'd probably be looking at his statistics in a different way. I don't think that there was any way that the Bears could have beat the Saints. The Saints are just a much better team, but I think that he's probably not getting enough praise. Not that he was great, like you said, but I think he did an adequate job, and I think he does deserve some praise for that. With all of the obstacles he faced of being benched after being the franchise guy, and being clowned, and Chicago wanted to get rid of him, coach not wanting to use him, and then he came out and played really well and got the Bears into the playoffs. I think he deserves a little bit of praise for that. But my buddy had a birthday, and we got him some Saints stuff. He's a big Saints fan. We got him some Camaro socks and a little mascot statue, kind of like my Rampage one here. And he put him up on his mantle. And once that happened, I knew that it was over. I knew the Saints were going to win that game. So, shout out to my buddy. Congratulations, your team's going forward. And maybe, just maybe, there's a chance that we face off in a championship game.
Yeah. All right. We'll go to the next game. This one's going to be really hard to describe. I don't even know if I should read the stats because basically they don't matter. But Cleveland 48, Pittsburgh 37, Mayfield 21 to 34, 263. 3 touchdowns, Chubb 18 for 76, Hunt 8 for 48, 2 touchdowns, Landry 5 for 92, a touchdown, Ben 47 to 68, 501, 4 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, Connor 1137 and a touchdown, Juju 13, 157 touchdown. This is one of those randos that you probably just never want to happen in the playoffs, where things just spiral. They spiraled quickly, and the game was basically over with 5 minutes to go in the first quarter.
Yeah, I watched as much as I could, with this game. I know that it got a lot better I wouldn't say better, but it got closer as the game progressed. But this game was over early on. Very, very shocking. I thought that after I watched the way the Browns played that last few games of the regular season, I really thought that they would come out flat, and that going up against the first team of the Steelers would be their downfall. We saw how they played against the second team, basically all the backups and reserves, and it wasn't good. Now, I did mention in our preview show of the wild card round that maybe they were saving their mojo, their run first style offense for the playoffs. And I did mention that if they did play that way, that they were still a dangerous team. I didn't think they would do it, but they definitely came out and they did it. And this is why they won that game. They controlled the clock, and Defensively, they were, all over Ben Roethlisberger. They were definitely kind of nudging receivers on routes and kind of throwing the timing off. And, they did what they were supposed to do. I don't think I'm not going to take anything away from them. They deserve credit. I think that this game was probably more Pittsburgh shooting itself in the foot, but, big mistakes and turnovers. But ultimately, the Browns came out in the end. They did what they're supposed to do to win games, which is, shut the other team down. Even if you do let them back in that fourth quarter, you still shut them down. They did a really good job at kind of taking over that game early on. And I think that everybody kind of felt that game was over after those, was it 28-0?
28-0, yeah. And,
I think,
one quarter and, Ben had 3 picks and the, snap over his head that, was the first play of the game that led to a touchdown.
yeah, I think that most people felt this game was over early on. And as much as Pittsburgh tried to make a game out of it, I really don't think it was even close to feeling like a game. On the contrary, compared to Saturday night, where I felt like that game was a good way to kind of tone myself down and settle down before bed. I felt like this game did it a little too early for me. I wasn't quite ready for that Sunday night to end, and it kind of ended with a big dud. I know the score was close, but the game definitely was not as close as the score seems.
Yeah. The only question mark, I don't know if it was as big as Vrabel's not going for it on 4th down, but Pittsburgh had the ball with got the game down to 13 points. I think they were on their other side of the field. It might have been about their 45. I'm trying to remember. It was about 4th and maybe 3 or 4. It might have been 5, but he decided to punt. I just don't understand that decision. When you're battling back like that, don't you just go, the brakes are off. Let's wing this around and do everything we can. What does it matter if you don't get that 4th down? I didn't quite understand that decision. And then, of course, you punt and Cleveland came down and scored, and the lead's back up to 20 there.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from. This is a type of situation where it's the playoffs. It's a one game. When you win, you're in. You lose, you go home. If you're down, you got to do everything in your power to try to get back in the game, especially when you're down that big. I felt like they tried their best, but I think that a lot of it was mental. I think that mentally they kind of knew that game was over early on, and that's probably one of the reasons why these type of decisions were made. I'm not trying to say that they gave up, but I think that they were kind of demoralized from that early whooping that they took. But overall, I think it was a successful season. A lot of people didn't think that Big Ben would have this type of a season. His stats weren't off the chains by any means, but the team as a whole was a lot better this season than I'm sure a lot of people thought they would be. I know that early on in the season, they were one of my picks as favorites to make it to the Super Bowl. Now they did have big letdown in that last quarter of the season, but ultimately I think it was still a successful season, and probably the last season for Big Ben. I'm not sure what the decisions are going to be they're made, but something that they're going to have to decide on, during the off season. But overall, I think that it was very disappointing for Pittsburgh, but also really, really happy and probably one of the best type of situations that the Browns could have pictured themselves being in, beating their division rivals in a playoff game.
Yeah, my thing with that is Cleveland's defense was wearing down because of all the turnovers. Cleveland's defense has basically been on the field a whole bunch, and you get that 4th down, you go down and score, and then all of a sudden it's a 6-point game, and that's when I think sphincters start tightening up a little bit, and you're going, oh my God, are we going to be this Browns team that goes up 28-0 in the first quarter and then completely blows it? And so that's why I just confused by the decision. You have over-aggressive ones, you had under-aggressive ones this week, and I don't know. I always aside with the aggressive ones. I think at least you're going after the game than just trying to hope something happens by your defense making a play or something.
Yeah, I ultimately, though, I think that it was the type of game that the Browns needed just to regain some of that mojo, and maybe going forward, they kind of stick with their game plan, which is definitely run first. That's what's going to make it most successful going forward. Pound that rock with, those stud running backs you have, and then put the hand in Baker Mayfield's hands, put the ball in Baker Mayfield's hands only when you have to do it. That's your key to success going forward. Now, they do have a tough road going forward, going up against the defending
road.
Super Bowl.
You mean going to Arrowhead to play the Chiefs?
Yeah, although, we have seen that the Chiefs are susceptible, especially to teams that come out and play really aggressive ball, which is the type of ball that Cleveland was playing late in that season, late in the regular season. Now they kind of drifted away from that a little bit, but again, this is a conversation for their next show.
Yeah, I will mention, though, that Big Ben threw for 500 yards on that Cleveland defense. So I think Patrick Kelsey and Tyreek might have some open space in front of them on that one. All right, so that's our recap and review of the playoff games. Let's get into our best and worst of the week. What do you got for best of the week?
Let's see, for best of the week on offense, or as we're calling it this week for our MVPs. My MVP on offense was Josh Allen, the quarterback of Buffalo. He went 26 of 35 for 324 yards, 2 touchdowns. He also had 11 rushes for 54 yards and a touchdown. And this is the first win in the playoffs since 1995. He was a big part of that win, and he came out and did what he was supposed to do. Now, he had a little bit of a blunder at the end of that game where he almost cost his team a turnover, but ultimately he did what he was supposed to do, which is come out, play smart, play tough, and they got their first win. Now they're advancing in the playoffs for the first time in a long time. So Josh Allen is my MVP on offense for the week.
Yeah, I got 2 guys. Josh Allen is my MVP on offense, and Aaron Donald on defense was just basically ate Russell Wilson for lunch until he got hurt. That's probably some concerning things we're going to break down on Thursday. Hopefully he can get healthy. What do you have also for your best of the week?
For my best of the week, my MVP for defense, I'm going with the Baltimore defense. They came into play. They shut down the regular season running back king and Derrick Henry. They knew in order to win, they needed to stop him and his over 2,000 yards for the season, and they did their job, holding him to just 2.2 yards per carry on 18 rushes for 40 yards. Now the Ravens are 6-0 in road wildcard games, and they're moving on. So they are my MVP for defense.
All right. You got any more MVPs?
I do. I have MVP for coaching also. And I know that things are going a little different this time around. I'm going with an offensive coordinator. I'm going with Alex Van Pelt, the Cleveland offensive coordinator, in a matchup where a lot of people, including myself, thought that they were too depleted to win. The Browns offensive coordinator took play calling duties for Kevin Stefanski, who was quarantined due to COVID, and they beat their division rivals to advance in the playoffs for the first time since 1994. So Van Pelt is my MVP for coaching.
All right. So let's go to worst of the week. Who are your LVPs of the week?
LVPs. Let's see. LVP. This is really tough because you're in the playoffs. It's hard to really call you, LVP or losers of the week. But
I have a couple.
Yeah, we still have to give these out. So for offense, my LVP of the week is probably I'm going to go with Big Ben. I know that he had 500 yards and everything. But this was the most important game of the year, and Big Ben felt the pressure of the Browns defense, especially early on. Not so much in the second half, but early on he felt it, and he ended up throwing for over 500 yards. But he also threw as many picks as he did touchdowns with 4. And now the Steelers' 2020 story ends, and the Browns move on. So he's my MVP or worst of the week for offense.
Yeah, I got 2 LVPs. One, we already went over him, Matt Nagy. That was an atrocious Chicago Bears game plan. Lifeless, and I'd like to say goodbye to you so I don't have to watch that Chicago Bears team play next year. And funny enough, LVP on the winning side, Buffalo Bills linebacker, Matt Milano. Mostly all those Jack Doyle catches were going down on his side of the field. I don't know how many times he got lost in coverage, but it was numerous. And how about we pick up our pass coverage here, buddy? That that almost cost you the game there.
Yeah, he definitely had a few blunders here and there, but I felt really bad taking any winning team and putting them on this list. So I went with losers for this week. But my worst of the week for defense, or LVP as we're calling it, I'm going with the Seahawks. After coming out of the gate very aggressive and injuring the starting quarterback Wolford, I even thought they made some plays that they probably weren't making early on in the season, but they were playing really well early on. Now, at some point, they had to figure out that their main purpose on defense was to stop Cam Akers, especially when Wolford was out, and they couldn't do it. Well, Cam Akers came out and he broke some Ram rookie records, amassing 131 yards on the ground. He also had a touchdown on the ground. He had 2 catches for 45 yards. So the main purpose for that defense was to stop Cam, and they couldn't do it. So the Seahawks defense, who are now out of the playoffs, are my worst of the week for defense, or MVP, as you'd like to call them.
All right. Anything else?
Yeah, I actually also have a coach on here. I'm going with our regular formula here. So my MVP or worst of the week for coaching, Adam Gase. I'm kidding. It's not Adam Gase. Doug Peterson. No, I'm still kidding. I actually had a tough time with this, but I ended up going with Matt Nagy as well. I think that he didn't put his best game plan together. He definitely needed to come out and run the ball a little bit more and put some trust in Trubisky, and I don't think he did that. He performed pretty poorly. I think that coaching-wise, it almost felt like that offense and defense both felt like there was no trust there. And it's probably one of the reasons why not only the Saints come out and completely obliterate them, but the Saints advance, and they also broke their own team record for least amount of points allowed in a playoff game in team history. So Matt Nagy is my worst coach of the wild card round.
All right. That's our show. We'll be back on Thursday to preview this week's round 2 playoff games. Be sure to find all our podcasts at greenlightnetwork.org. You can also find us on Facebook at Greenlight Network, on YouTube on Greenlight Network. Where can we find you, Achilles?
As always, you can find me on Twitter at TD Achilles, YouTube That Dude Achilles, or you can follow me on Facebook at Achilles Rain.
You can find me at GLN Champ 5 on Instagram and Twitter. And that's our show. And we're out.